Healthcare providers plead for new options ahead of deep budget cuts. And toxic smoke is a concern in our lead tonight after a salvage yard fire. Plus, a Glacier National Park tourist is thanking Kalispell responders for saving her life.
Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on KAJ, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, I'm Ariana Lake. Some healthcare providers say the state is failing Montanans because they can't come to sensible solutions on the budget. The comments come after substantial cuts were announced this week as a result of budget actions by the 2017 legislature and the governor. As MTN's Mike Dennison shows us today, providers came out in full force to a hearing in Helena to object to the cuts.
State revenue missed a key target last month, and according to a law signed by the governor in May, that means a series of budget cuts must occur. Among them is a proposed 3.5% cut in rates paid to those providing services for the poor and disabled under Medicaid for mental health, assisted living, nursing homes, and other programs. An operator of an assisted living center in Churchill said the cutbacks mean the money won't be there to keep a 94-year-old and a 97-year-old in her facility.
Because of the Medicaid rates and the cuts in Medicaid, my hands are tied. I am going to be forced to move these two beautiful people out of their home at those ages. That is absurd. It's ridiculous.
Another operator from Polson said the rate cuts mean it will be even harder to hire and retain workers at assisted living homes.
How can you convince someone to come and do the dirty work that's required to care for the elderly in our state when they can make more money at a Starbucks? How do I do that?
Other in-home care businesses said Montanans who need care sometimes end up getting sent out of state because providers here can't afford to offer needed services. Janessa Hendon of Consumer Direct Care told of an injured logger who had to be moved last week to a nursing home in Washington state after 14 years of home care in Montana.
He died Thursday afternoon alone, away from home and out of state, because we failed him. Together, the state and the providers failed him because we can't come to a sensible solution on these rate cuts.
Bullock administration officials say their hands are tied because laws passed by the legislature dictate $26 million in cuts in Medicaid rates this year and next. But many of those who testified said Bullock has consistently undervalued or ignored local providers of care for the poor and disabled. They noted that people working at state institutions like the State Mental Hospital in Warm Springs aren't seeing any big cuts and are getting a small raise as well. Under the law, the Bullock administration may not have many other options to cut the human service budget. But for the people who testified here today, they clearly want the governor to look elsewhere to absorb the pain. Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
The Bullock administration says it hopes to decide on the nature of the cuts later this summer. Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke called Alaska's two Republican senators to warn them of repercussions for the nation's largest state if they fail to toe the Trump administration line on health care. Alaska's Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski said she received a phone call and had what she described as a difficult conversation with Secretary Zinke after she was criticized on Twitter by President Trump for her vote against the motion to proceed to health care legislation. CBS News reports Zinke allegedly told Murkowski her actions were jeopardizing Alaska's future with the administration.
The reality is it was a difficult conversation, and what I told the president, what I have told the president since he was elected, was I'm here to help the people of Alaska, and I'm here to help the people of the country. And I'll work with you, Mr. President. I want to work with you because we have issues that need to be resolved, whether it's Alaska's energy issues or promises made to our state or health care.
Zinke, now under the spotlight, is a Republican from Whitefish and former U.S. House member, sworn in as Interior Secretary in early March. And we'll check out tonight's weather conditions now by turning things over to Chief Meteorologist Aaron Yost. Aaron?
And we did see some more thunderstorms this afternoon across southwest Montana, but unfortunately none of those really making their way even close to home for us in the northwest quarter of the state as we continue to sit high and dry across the region. You can see the radar and satellite loop over the past 3 hours clearing on out as that drier air starts to build in overnight, and that's going to be the case here for the extended forecast. Very dry conditions for us continue in northwest Montana. All the while we'll see sunshine, haze at times, not as bad as us folks a little bit further to the south of us, and we're also going to see those temperatures creeping upwards 90s for the extended forecast. All those details on the way.
Thanks, Aaron. Stage 3 evacuation order remains in effect for part of Mineral County tonight as crews continue to battle the Sunrise Fire southeast of Superior. The latest reports detail the blaze is now over 3,700 acres with 5% containment tonight. The Mineral County Sheriff's Office issued that Stage 3 evacuation order last night for residents of Sunrise and Forts Flats. Officials say about 25 to 30 homes are evacuated and a center has been set up at Superior High School to help evacuees. About 60 structures total are threatened by this fire. And the Lolo Peak fire more than doubled in size yesterday, and as you can see in that time lapse, created a large plume of smoke. The blaze has now burned 2,900 acres. More than 1,300 acres of that was added just yesterday alone. Fire activity increased thanks to running crown fires that pushed the fire up Falls Creek Canyon east toward Lolo Peak. And fire managers say that by late evening, the fire had spotted west of Meadow Creek, crossing South Fork Lolo Creek Canyon and burned to the top of the ridge, while Highway 12 remains open to traffic west of Lolo. If you're down there driving, you need to be aware of that increased fire traffic on the road, and officials are asking that drivers obey posted speed limits. And U.S. Senator Steve Daines' office announced this afternoon that FEMA has approved emergency funding for the Lodgepole Complex fires in eastern Montana. That complex is made up of multiple fires that have burned some 270,000 acres in Garfield County. The Bullock administration told us that it applied for a fire management assistance grant from the Federal Emergency Management Agency last week, but that request was denied. The Bullock administration appealed the denial, and Montana's U.S. Senator John Tester and Steve Daines, along with Representative Greg Gianforte, urged FEMA to reconsider. This grant is 75% federal money. The other 25% comes from state money that is matched. It can be applied to fire suppression costs, including fire camps and evacuation shelters. And it's so dry in Montana right now, it doesn't even take a forest to start a raging fire. A well-known Arley auto salvage yard goes up in flames today after a grass fire tore through the property, destroying hundreds of cars. Fire crews from St. Ignatius all the way to Frenchtown, even tribal firefighting crews, put everything they had into fighting this one, including using helicopters to dump water and retardant. We spoke with the owner of Kelly's Auto Salvage, who estimated that he lost at least 500 cars in the fire, many left as smoldering shells of steel. Fire crews responded around 2:30 this afternoon. No one was hurt, though. They kept the fire from spreading, but the danger now is toxic smoke. A neighbor who lives right next to the business grabbed a hose to protect his own property, says that fire moved fast.
Oh yes, the cars would sound like firecrackers and tin cans, just exploding everywhere.
The worst problem we have is air quality is horrible. For breathing, the tires are burning, fuel is burning, the paint on the cars, everything in this whole yard is toxic.
Fire crews believe they know where the fire started, and they're now investigating how it started. A woman visiting Glacier National Park says she may not be alive if it weren't for the expertise and quick action responders in northwest Montana. Tonight she shares her story with our own Jack Ginsberg for a look at what could happen when a medical emergency strikes in the middle of rural Montana.
This past weekend, Barbara Sue Brody and her family were visiting Glacier National Park when she experienced chest pain while hiking to Two Medicine Lake. The chest pain got worse and eventually led to cardiac arrest.
I started having a little bit of pain, and it was hot, and I had said to my daughter that I didn't feel quite right, so we cut our hike short to wait for the boat, and that's the last I knew.
After receiving CPR, she was transported to Kalispell Regional Medical Center by helicopter, where the doctors first performed 2 percutaneous coronary interventions, a procedure where a catheter is run down the throat to place a balloon pump support to free up any blockages. However, Barbara Sue's condition was still in decline.
The doctors moved on to implement an Impella device. What that device basically does is takes blood from the top of the left ventricle and disperses it to the ascending aorta. This procedure ended up saving the patient's life.
The technology used for this procedure and the expertise needed to implement it is not widely available across the country, and without it, there was no guarantee that Barbara Sue would have survived. Her doctor, Mayank Agrawal, says that she survived because of everyone involved in the rescue.
I think this case is an example where it's not about just one device or one physician. I think this is a very good example where system works, And this is an example where we had the shocking device in the field with the rangers. We have an emergency helicopter system with alert, and we had physicians who had the ability in this hospital where we have the most innovative scientific advancement available over here where we can take care of our patients.
Northwest Montana is a huge destination for tourists, and they should feel safe knowing that there is remarkable medical care as well.
The fact that there was a helicopter that could come in and get me, a guy who knew how to get that tube down my throat, and then I could come here and have a doctor who has all the knowledge and skill to do it. It's incredible. It's a miracle.
Reporting in Kalispell, Jack Ginsburg, MTN News.
Multiple departments were involved in that rescue. And coming up, a substantial amount of the state now under some sort of drought category. Aaron updates that next and has a look at your 7-day hot and dry forecast. And we'll tell you about a new bill by Montana's Democratic senator pushing for more protection of land in Yellowstone.